Why did I stay? Now that is a great question. My name is Estella Marie, and this is Said Out Loud. Now, that's a great question. Why did I stay? I've asked myself that so many times that I don't even care to count. Because if I'm being honest, there were so many situations where I knew that something wasn't right, but crazy enough, I allowed myself to stay. And if you would have asked me a couple years ago if I would have used the word allow myself to stay, absolutely not. It would have felt fake because in my eyes, in my lenses that I used to live in before, I would have told you that I was forced into those situations. But now that I have a different perspective, a different mindset, a different set of lenses, I am able to see that I allowed myself to stay in those situations where I knew I shouldn't have even been. I think one of the first times that I can look back on and truly ask myself, why did I stay? I would tell you that it was in a time where I was living at a family member's house. I wasn't quite a child, but I wasn't quite an adult. But I think that isn't even the time that I would look back on and ask myself why I stayed. I think the better question is, when did I first feel that shame or that guilt? And that shame and that guilt that was actually mine. Because the first time I ever felt shame or I felt guilt was under the roof of my own home. When there was a situation that had happened that deep down I knew that was not okay and I knew that it was not right. But the truth of the matter is, I didn't know any better. Here's the thing, the body is always going to react when it is stimulated and there's pleasure. But that's the one thing. But that was one of the first times that I ever felt guilt and completely ashamed with nowhere to turn, nowhere to run to. One of the things that I was absolutely sure of, and ignoring the simple fact that inside I was screaming and nobody could hear me. Everything inside of me was saying, please, no, don't stop. But I was so paralyzed with fear and guilt and shame because this was somebody who I called a family member. That was the first time that I had told myself that I'm justifying this because they're not my blood. Or maybe they knew better. Or maybe I was the one who provoked the situation. The only thing that I think that I was hoping that would change in that situation or that scenario would be that the person knew what they did, or at least came to the understanding years later, and there would have been some vindication, maybe even an apology, versus being ignored and made to feel like I was the issue, I was the problem, I was the pursuer. The biggest thing that I was afraid of is that if I said something, nothing would happen. And if we're being honest, that's pretty much how it went because there was no belief in what I had said, what I had brought up. So I buried it. I took it on the chin, for lack of better words. There was more instances of this that happened. It happened on more than one occasion with more than one family member. As I got older, I had wondered, was I romanticizing these exact relationships? They were clearly not healthy. I don't think people say out loud the first interactions that we actually have growing up in toxic environments and crazy situations. Those first interactions are actually with our family members. And that's not until we step outside into a social circle, our circle. The first circle of people that we have is family, blood or not. I think once we develop our own circle of people that we actually get to call friends, because sometimes we actually get the privilege of being able to call these friends our family. This is the family that we get to choose. Nobody says out loud what happens when that friendship starts to fade and it starts to not feel safe anymore because people don't say out loud, what do you do when that friendship and that person is consistently putting you down. What do you do when there is toxicity in that friendship? But you stay because they've known you for so long. You have a shared history, your deepest, darkest secrets. That person is your person. How many times would you have given the excuses for their behavior? And that's simply because we're afraid to lose them. Because again, this is the family that we've chosen. What happens when the friendship that you've developed for many years, the distance starts to creep in because they're so busy living their lives and you're so busy living yours that there's no communication. Then there starts to be the distance creates the silence, and then the silence creates a non existent friendship. But let's circle back about that being in friendships when somebody puts you down or is talking behind your back or making you feel small in a world where you once felt like you belonged. How many of us stayed in those situations because we were just happy to have them in our lives? And we didn't want to ruin the relationship. We didn't want to kill the friendship. We didn't want to throw it away because maybe they didn't mean that. Maybe they were just having an off day. What makes it so hard to let go of those relationships is because we were in the trenches together, because we understood one another, because the similarity of each one of our lives mirrored each other. There was history and there was loyalty to one another. So we excuse that type of behavior, even if it's tearing us apart and it's toxic and it's eating us from the inside out. We learn to swallow our voice, swallow our opinion. We're actually learning that silence is better than standing up because if I still need or want and the craving of that relationship, and if we're being honest, I don't just stop, it doesn't just stop with that friendship. It bleeds over into so many different areas of our lives, that craving and that needing and that wanting and that attention, the love, respect, and honesty. Here's the thing that nobody says out loud. What happens when it's the family dynamics? When you are tolerating the different kinds of pains that comes from realizing that that person who was supposed to love you is the one who's actually hurting you. How many times are we going to tolerate that manipulation and the lying and the secrets because you're a family member? I don't know how many times I would be put in situations where I would have to defend, AKA lie for that family member. I don't know how many times trying to keep what happens in the house stays in that house mentality silenced my voice. Simply because I wanted to keep the peace. I wanted there to be happiness, even in this world of dysfunction, even in the unknowing of what I was coming home to every single day. There were times when I would speak my mind or what I was feeling. Let me tell you, it didn't turn out well. Because when I finally figured out that I could use my voice, I was reprimanded. It took me a year or two before I was even able to actually use my voice and not have any shame or guilt behind me speaking my truth. Because what I went through and what I felt was completely valid. My perception, my perspective, the things that deserve to be told, I am sharing that now. But people don't say out loud enough how hard it is when you end up being that black sheep because you are standing on your truth. Because you're trying to break all of those chains and all of the history that was never mine to carry. When the phone stops ringing, when you stop getting invited to the parties, to the family gatherings, you learn how to move on without them. And the sad reality for me was in the heaviest part of my addiction, I had already learned to live without them. But at that point, that was a choice that I made. Now that I'm in recovery and life has gotten better and my life has turned around, this is now their choice. Because now I'm doing some healing, right? I'm doing some discovering of why these things were making me feel the way that I felt, why I acted the way that I acted, and why I did what I did. That does not make everybody happy with me. And what I'm finding out is it's not my job to make sure that everybody is happy with every move that I make, everything that I say, or every action that I take. I'm okay with being the villain in other people's stories. Because for so long, I didn't have a voice in what was going on. I didn't even know how to verbalize the feelings that I was feeling at the time. I had asked myself, if you go down this road of discovering and healing in this process, are you ready to lose the people that you call family? Are you really ready for the ramifications that'll bring if you do this? The distance that'll happen? And my answer was, I have to be, because my life is on the line. Every other time where my life was on the line, I didn't choose me, but this time I did. And I think that is a big part of why I always need to feel and the longing for acceptance. People don't say out loud enough that we accept less than what we truly deserve. And that's because we don't know what our worth is. We will settle for whatever someone else is willing to give us. That was me. I would take your breadcrumbs happily. The problem with that was that I realized at a certain point, I don't have self love, self confidence, self trust, hell, even self esteem. I mirrored myself in every single person that I chose to be around in a situation with. It was a reflection of me and how I truly felt about me. But I didn't see that at the time, right? For example, there were things that I had accepted in my past that the woman that I am today would have never stood for. That looked like being in relationships with abusive people, whether that was mentally, physically, or emotionally. I allowed myself to be there. But the woman that I am today would never stand for that type of shit. The crazy part is when I settled for those breadcrumbs, it was because I didn't know that I had worth. And maybe because it felt better than being alone and having absolutely nothing, that I stayed in those situations. I stayed in those situations because if I'm being honest and I say it out loud, I didn't feel like I deserved better. From all of the things that I went through in my childhood, my teenage years, and young adult years, I didn't feel like I deserved any kind of happiness. The crazy part is I started giving out exactly what I was receiving. I was lashing out because chaos was my normal. I looked for it, I acted on it because I didn't have any self-esteem. If we're being honest, if I didn't have any self-love, how could I even give love? When I was in that stage of accepting breadcrumbs, I was a shell of a person. I wasn't whole, not at all. Accepting less than what I knew I deserved cost me so much. My dignity, my morals, it cost me looking at the woman, looking at myself in the mirror, not having respect for her because I couldn't even look at my own reflection and love the person looking back at me. There were so many times that I had confused attention for love because I thought if you paid attention to me, you stayed around me, that meant that you loved me. If you laughed at my jokes because I am a comedian, if you laughed at my jokes, that meant you liked me. There's so many times that I had mistaken being noticed or thought of as actually being valued. Because again, I didn't know any better. I thought that all the craziness around me and the chaos was actually passion. I want to look back at that and laugh so hard. What a crazy world I thought I lived in. You know the song by Beyonce, Crazy in Love? That's what I thought love was. It had to be crazy to be in love. It had to be chaotic to be in love. Nobody talks about the other side of looking for that attention and what it cost you because I was somebody who always looked for attention and approval. Sometimes, even to this day, I catch myself looking for that attention and looking for that approval. It doesn't just go away. It doesn't. You could be more aware of it and recognize it, but it doesn't go away. I will say this out loud. I cheated on the people that I was with, and that is not easy for me to say out loud. I did it because I didn't value myself enough, or maybe I was looking for value in another person. I didn't love myself enough that I thought I was worthy enough that I tried to find it in another person. And I'm going to apologize right now if you are somebody who is listening to me right now and you happen to be one of my exes, that you were in the wake of my destruction. I'm sorry that I couldn't be the person that I am today for you. I'm sorry that the person that you came in contact with back then was completely destroyed. I'm grown enough to say it now out loud that I am sorry, that I apologize that you had to be around a version of me that I didn't even know who I was yet. Luckily enough, with my husband, I found healthy love. Let me tell you right now, I did not go looking for it. And truth be told, I didn't even want it. It was a blessing in disguise. In the fact that my husband is not my typical type. He is not somebody that I would ever find myself with. We don't speak the same language. We don't have the same beliefs. We don't even have the same cultures. We hardly see eye to eye on things. But the one thing that brought us together and that keeps us together is recovery in God. He helped put me back together piece by piece. He helped me learn to love myself, value myself, respect myself by the way that he treated me. Nobody says out loud how hard it is to stay in situations and relationships because you were afraid of being alone. Because leaving was harder than actually staying. Or, how do I start over? How do we say out loud that I am afraid to admit that this isn't what I hoped it would be? How do you grieve the potential of something that you thought was going to be real, but it turned out it wasn't? How many times do we stay in what is familiar, even when it's not safe, and it robbed you of all of your peace? I have done that more times than I can count. Nobody says out loud, when you finally find a healthy love, how you have to unlearn all the things that you used to do to survive in the relationship that sacrificed your happiness. How a healthy love can make you feel so uncomfortable because you're not used to it. It's crazy to think that today, the person that I am and the person that I'm with doesn't make me cry. I don't even remember the last time I cried because of something that he did or something that he said. He's not that type of man. I have a man that I've had to learn how to lower my ego because a lot of times I think I know everything. I've had to lower my pride and being humble enough to ask for help. I'm a woman who has always been in her masculine energy, and I finally get to relax into my feminine energy. Nobody says out loud when you meet the right person how all of the things that you used to do to fight for attention, to try to get time with them, trusting them, not looking through their phone and wondering if they're out with somebody else or thinking about somebody else, worried that the next thing that comes out of their mouth is going to cause a fight. We don't talk about what it looks like to have to unlearn the things that we had to do to survive. I think one of the biggest lessons that my husband taught me about love is that love doesn't have to hurt. Love is not abusive. Love is not demeaning. Love is not calling you out of your name. Love is not striking you when you've done something wrong. Love is not hurting the other person intentionally. Love is not payback. Love is not putting tears on the person's face that you love. Love is not talking about your relationship with other people. I say this because today I am in a healthy relationship for the first time in my life, and it feels completely different. Crazy part is, I know every single thing that I had to go through led me to this exact point in my life where I have finally found peace, where I'm finally unpacking my baggage that kept me in survival. I'm finally able to look in the mirror at the woman that I am becoming, and I love who I'm seeing today. I don't think people say out loud what they would tell their younger self. I'm telling you now, if I had to sit across from younger me, the little version of me, there's a few things that I would want to tell her. First and foremost, hang in there. I promise you it'll get better. I need you to know that no matter what happens, no matter what you go through, it'll all be worth it. I need you to know that God is with you every step that you are taking, regardless if you think that you feel Him or that you see Him, He is with you. I know you want me to tell you what the future is going to hold, but I can't do that because I know you. You're going to try to change it, and then we will not be where we are today. I know that you're going to want to hear the apologies from the people who hurt you, the people who took your innocence, the people who robbed you of being a child. It's not going to come. The thing is, I can't offer that to you. But what I can do is I could tell you that you learn how to move on without the apology, and you find peace in that. You no longer have to live in chaos and wondering what's happening moment to moment, day to day. The thing is, you found your way around it, even though you had to go through it. Because what you're looking for is the peace within. You can't keep trying to look for peace in everybody else because the peace is found within yourself. I need you to stop blaming yourself for thinking that you can control things and you know what I'm talking about. The things that caused the most pain and the thing that made you anguish for your teen years and your young adult years. The thing is, I know you don't know this yet, but everything that happened to you shaped you to be the strong, beautiful woman that you are. The biggest thing is I want to tell you thank you for never leaving my side through all of the years that we've gone through. You have always been there tugging on my arm and reminding me that you are there. I need you to know that I am here now and I'm going to take care of you. I want you to say this with me that we are whole and we are happy. We are at peace. We are no longer running from our problems. We are finding a solution. Baby girl, we are loved unconditionally. And some days it feels like we're alone, but I need you to hear me. We are not. Thank you for walking with me in this journey called life. Thank you for staying with me. The thing is, we don't say out loud that we weren't weak for staying. We were honestly doing the best that we could with what we knew at the time. How amazing it is to finally be 40 years old and know what love feels like. And I'm not talking about the love that has strings attached to it or the kind of love that takes something to get something. I'm talking pure, genuine, authentic love. That's a gift. If you're listening to this right now, I want you to know that you are not weak because you stayed. Because it's the only thing that you have known. It's what's familiar. And that's okay too. We stayed because we were looking for love in places that could never fully give us what we needed or what we wanted. And maybe the bravest thing that you will ever do is to finally walk away. So I ask you, what are you holding on to? Can you say it out loud?